What's going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of California Underground. I have with me today Cynthia, my trusty co host, who is going to join me in commenting and breaking down Noodle's recent presser that he had to rush and obviously get out because Roe v. Wade, as we all know, the draft opinion was leaked this week. So every Democrat with a national profile decided I got to make it all about me and figure out how to grandstand about it. And Newsom is no stranger to grandstanding. And I figured, why not watch this presser? Because we watched it. We both watched it beforehand. And as we were saying before we just hopped on, this is a wild press conference full of stuff that I got about 30 seconds in. I'm maybe not even that. Maybe I got like 10 seconds in before I had to stop myself and go, he really didn't just say that. That's unbelievable that he just said that. So, but before we get started, how are you doing today, Cynthia?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing all right for a Friday afternoon, day after Cinco de Mayo. Not a big official Mexican holiday for everyone out there who doesn't know. Even though someone wished me Cinco de Mayo walking out Chipotle, I guess they thought I was going to celebrate Cinco de Mayo at Chipotle. But
Wild.
yeah, so let's hop right in. Before we get started, do you have any thoughts right off the top, or do you want to save your thoughts for while we're in it and when we're finishing up, or what do you think?
My preliminary opinion is that I'm personally 100% pro life in just about every single instance. However, I know you mentioned this in your coffee and politics Wednesday streaming, but if you're in California, it's one thing to have a private and then a political stance, but if and I say if because this is simply a draft opinion, and with politics you can never be sure about anything until it's official, right? So even though I I honestly believe this is going to be what ends up happening, it's not final until they make this ultimate decision. That being said, if you're in California, politically speaking, I don't it's really not much is going to change. If anything, the Democrats are doubling down on the state level, which I'm happy to touch upon later on. Um, but yeah, those are just my preliminary thoughts. I'm personally 100% pro life, but if we're in California, it won't do much, but I still think it is a win, just from a personal and national perspective, even if it's not going to necessarily impact California politics in the way that I would want it to be. So I do
Mhm.
want to just kind of share that with the viewers, my stance on that.
Yeah, and a lot of his presser veers into fear mongering of some sort of slippery slope of what could happen with the Supreme Court. As if the Supreme Court goes out, and I think I've said this before, this fear mongering that like the Supreme Court sits there and picks cases out of the blue and says, "Oh, I want to overturn this and I want to overturn that." That's not how it works in the Supreme Court. It starts at a trial court, and then it has to be appealed, and then it has to go to the Supreme Court. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of cases that apply for this thing called a writ of certiorari, which is Latin for like permission to go in front of the court every year. And the court only hears a small handful of those cases. So they don't get to pick and choose what specific thing they want to go after every term. They don't get to say, "Oh, I want to overturn same-sex marriage," which is what they've been kind of pushing. Is that, oh, that's the next thing they're going to go after same-sex marriage? Well, there hasn't been any substantial lawsuits about same-sex marriage, so there's nothing for them to decide, and that's how the Supreme Court works. And I think they're trying to make it sound like the Supreme Court is actively going after these issues and these rights, when in reality that's not how it works. Yet they have to wait for a case to come up through the ranks and get to the court for them to hear it, and then they have to make a decision on it. So, but there's a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of he went off script for most of it. I'm pretty sure all of it. I didn't see him look at a teleprompter or any sort of notes, and I don't know if that's Gavin Newsom at his best when he goes off script. And we'll get to the famous transphobe moment as well. So that's a little bit into the video. that he's now getting lambasted for. So without further ado, are you ready to hop in and hear the craziness?
Let's do it.
All right. I believe this was at, I don't know which parenthood it is, maybe LA or likely
It's in Los
Sacramento.
Angeles.
It's Los Angeles. Okay, that makes sense why all the local news were covering it. All right, let's hop in.
I don't think I hear Newsom's volume. I don't know if it's my end or not.
Oh, hold on. I think I have to do this again. I've done this before, and I always forget. There's a little box that I have to click. We do this on the fly, and that's one of the things about doing it live. Here we go.
The Supreme Court appears to have relates to rolling back our constitutional rights. The rights have been well established and affirmed over and over again for close to half a century. It's a remarkable moment. I remember.
Okay, so I apologize. This is not our this was not my fault. The technical difficulties. These were the loudest videos I could find for some reason. He's in front of. If you're not watching, he's like in front of a bunch of mics, so it's hard to hear. He's outside. So I'll try and fix it in post editing. But he did say there constitutional rights that have been enshrined and held up again and again and again throughout our country's history. We're only about 10 seconds in, and this is the first thing I have to stop at. He must have short-term memory loss because he must have forgot that he himself was taken to the Supreme Court by a church here in San Diego County, down Chula Vista, and he lost because he was trampling on the rights of people who want to worship, and they was trampling on their freedom to exercise their religion, which is a right that has been enshrined and held up again and again and again. So it's ironic already he's like talking about protecting rights that have already been enshrined and protected when he himself already was taken to the Supreme Court not too long ago for trampling on rights that are enshrined by the Constitution.
You know, when he says that, all I think about is basically everything that's happened in California the past years. Like, oh, really? The guy that's been kind of pushing for mandates and all these other things. You want to talk to me about bodily autonomy and freedom? Okay, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. It's funny now. All of a sudden, bodily or bodily autonomy and my body, my choice is all of a sudden back on the menu again with the left. So,
yep.
Receiving from my staff, Ann Patterson, my legal secretary, that political article, and I said, "Is this the Onion? Is this actually happening? Is this true?" I honestly felt that way. In so many ways, it was predictable, but when you actually saw that decision, you started to flip through it. It's just a remarkable moment in American history. At a time when countries around the world are expanding liberties, expanding freedoms, expanding rights, here we are in the United States of America about to roll back rights. The entire history of the Constitution has been about the expansion of rights. The entire history of the United States has been about expanding rights, not restricting rights.
Expanding rights, not restricting rights. Because if there's anything California is absolutely known for, it's expanding rights under the Constitution. Not the Second Amendment, that's for sure. They are not expanding rights under the Second Amendment. They're not expanding rights under the First Amendment, considering that they passed a law or trying to pass a law that would create California's own disinformation board or their own Ministry of Truth. COVID, worship, freedom of religion, I don't know, freedom to own your own business, the takings clause, any of that stuff? No, none of that rings a bell. Okay. So California has been trying to expand rights as much as possible under the Constitution.
Yeah, the nerve. Before I forget, this was one thing I wanted to touch upon since we're on this topic of the Constitution. The biggest, the issue of abortion is obviously very, very touchy, but the biggest reason that even people who, even like more quote unquote moderate Republicans could agree upon why they support overturning Roe is because the right to abortion is not in the Constitution at all. Like constitutional scholars have shared that also. That's probably like the biggest unifying reason why this would be, in my personal opinion, the right decision, like all issues aside, as far as like where life begins and whatnot. I covered a presser for work on what happened on the California political side and how the Democrats are combating this, and I found it hysterical as Newsom's talking about, expanding rights. Basically, the presser was with all the female legislators at Sacramento, and following the leaked drafted opinion on Monday evening, obviously everyone was giving their statements. There were politicians on both sides, nationally and statewide, giving their takes. In California, the Assembly Speaker Anthony Rendon, the Senate President Tempore, Tony Atkins, and then Gavin Newsom, they released like their own joint statement, talking about how they basically wanted to make sure abortion, is a protected right here in California. Doubling down, doing their thing. Not that we're surprised, but at the presser, I even covered this, for my report, but it was just hilarious. Like, I pointed out the irony is that the right to abortion is not in the Constitution, and constitutional scholars have pointed this out. And at the presser, Atkins even admitted that the right to abortion is not in the California state constitution. So they want to cover all their bases and introduce this constitutional amendment to make sure that it is in the Constitution. So she admits that this isn't in the Constitution for the state of California. That's why they're covering all these bases. And even in the legislature, they also have introduced a batch of bills. Some are still pending in the committee. Some, have been pulled, but they did introduce a batch of bills to kind of cover all their bases, like on that side as well. And there is one that does have a committee hearing in the next few days, to make abortion, quote unquote, basically make California a sanctuary state in those kinds of terms, in a right. So it's just really interesting to me. The Democrats, they don't care about the Constitution until it comes to this issue. The Democrats, they don't care about, they talk about birthing people, and then all of a sudden women is now relevant. Men and women are the only terms that exist when we talk about this issue. It's really astounding to me.
Yeah, and this is part of that fear mongering of, if this decision is overturned, or if Roe v. Wade is overturned, all these rights are going to be taken away from people. When in reality, I touched upon this on Wednesday. Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself said that it went far beyond what it should have ruled, because at that point, state legislators were already liberalizing to the idea of abortion, meaning that there were more states that were not criminalizing it, and they were allowing it to a certain point. I haven't looked at the specifics of how many states outright ban abortion altogether. I don't think there are many states that outright ban abortion. Even Texas has 15 weeks. They have the heartbeat bill, and Florida has similar litigation or legislation that says after a certain amount of time you can't have an abortion. So this idea that they're just going to take away rights, when in reality they're just taking away this decision and allowing the states to make their own decisions. And in California, I mean, you have all these people who are hopping mad about it, but it's not really going to change anything for California. So there's no rolling back of rights in California.
Exactly.
So let's keep going. We're only 3 minutes in, and we got a lot more of Noodles rambling to get through.
It's not rolling back rights, and this Supreme Court is poised to roll back constitutionally protected rights. And don't think for a second, this is where they stop. And if you think it affects someone else over there, this is about you. I mean, if the right to privacy is not foundational, they're coming after you. They are.
The right to privacy.
The right to privacy. Okay. Well, first you can see he's alluding to this whole slippery slope fear mongering, because it doesn't change anything in California. So you can't really scare people in California to be like, well, if they overturn this, you can't get abortions. Now in California, they're going to do everything they can, use all your taxpayer money to pay for it. He starts to go, well, you'll be the next person that they're going to start rolling back rights. And you picked up on it too. Now all of a sudden there's a constitutional right to privacy and what you do with your body. Just so we're clear, this is the same Gavin Newsom and the California Democrats who pushed through a whole bunch of COVID bills, the vaccine work group, they called them, to force private employers, public employers, everybody, children, all of that, everybody in school to get a vaccine, whether you decide to or not. Correct? That's the same Gavin Newsom. We're all on the same page.
Yeah, and it didn't like collectively, like the Democrat apparatus as a whole, I mean, to me, like this makes my blood boil because, yeah, like obviously politically, even like nationally, like every time there was things to come for a vote to like lift any kind of emergency or mandates, I haven't seen a single Democrat, like voting wise, ever be against it. So there's that. But another element, like right to privacy, even like in real life, like amongst those that tend to vote Democrat and even like the elected officials themselves, I remember they encouraged people to snitch on their loved ones if people were, they wanted to go celebrate the holidays or do different things, and defy the quote unquote orders. They're the last people to me to talk about, you know, your right to privacy. They encouraged you to overstep those bounds.
Yeah, there was no privacy when it came to COVID. It was Big Brother was watching. We'll report you. We'll snitch on you. Oh, and you have to do everything that we say regarding your own medical privacy and your own body. But now we're all worried about the enshrined constitutional right of privacy. 3:30. We're only 3 minutes and 30 seconds in of a 30-minute clip. So
Fill in the blank. Who is you? It's us. It's all of us. Across a spectrum of issues. You think for a second same-sex marriage is safe in the United States of America? Give me a break. You heard an Indiana senator, United States senator, not retired, a current senator, U.S. senator, start talking about Loving versus Virginia. I'm actually old enough to remember that Loving decision was determined in my lifetime.
I tried to look this up because I was like, there's probably an explanation. I doubt he's accurately stating what really happened. I couldn't find anything about what he's talking about regarding this Indiana senator. He didn't name which Indiana senator. He just said an Indiana senator, sitting Indiana senator, talking about Loving versus, I think it's Virginia, Loving versus Virginia, which for those who don't know was a Supreme Court case regarding interracial marriage, which back at that time, Virginia outlawed interracial marriage. So now he's lumping same-sex marriage and interracial marriage together, saying that this is the goal of Republicans and the evil fascist Supreme Court is to get rid of same-sex marriage. And now interracial marriage will be outlawed as well. I mean, this court is just going to be on a roll. Once they get past Roe, it's just going to be, they're just going to go one after another, like immediately, because that's how it works. They can just run through issues and say, we don't like this, we don't like that, we don't like this. So
yeah, it's really interesting to me. I also couldn't. I mean, I'm pretty I would say my most active social media platform is Twitter, as far as me going on it and putting out content. And I couldn't find anything of what he's referencing at all. So fear mongering on that point. And then another point, I know that one funny blessing from it was just seeing like all the memes of Justice Clarence Thomas, like, oh yeah, like of course he's gonna of course Thomas is gonna like rule out interracial marriage. And for those who don't know, he's in an interracial marriage. So I just remember seeing those memes online, but I didn't see anything from like a senator talking about like, oh, more cases are that. So yeah, I just thought it was funny.
Yeah, I don't see. I couldn't find it, but not surprising that he's going to take something out of context and ramble off about it. So let's see what else he has to say.
Blacks couldn't marry whites in the United States of America, and he actually suggested, because that's unenumerated in the Constitution, that should.
Okay, I'm sorry. This has nothing to do with his politics. If you're watching, can he please button his jacket or not button his jacket? It's really distracting that he keeps trying to button his jacket, but he keeps failing to button his jacket. He looks a little sloppy in this. Usually he's better dressed. He looks a little sloppy.
My friend
shirt's
pointed
all a
out he's
mess.
wearing a lot of makeup too.
Oh yeah, I mean he loves wearing makeup, and he probably got his hair coiffed perfectly for today. But his shirt looks all messy. He doesn't look like his suit fits and stuff like that. Maybe that's why he couldn't figure out his button issue. But it was really bugging me. I was like, either button it or don't button it. So
Be on the docket for the U.S. Supreme Court. Just think about that for a second. And you don't have to think that far back. I'll never forget. You look at the lower court decision in the Loving case, I'll never forget the decision. The judge, when sentencing Richard Loving to prison, said, God, sir, God never wanted the races to mix because God put different races on different continents, he said, for a reason. That was the judge's decision. How far removed are we from that kind of thinking today with this current Supreme Court? I'm serious. How far away, how far removed are we from that kind of thinking with this current majority on the U.S. Supreme Court? But it's not just.
I would say pretty far. I'm just going to go ahead and say that was the lower appellate court. That was not the Supreme Court that he's talking about. In this case, has got to be early 60s, late 50s. Yeah, if I remember, it's like 56 or something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it's around that time period. So to give you an idea of how old this case is that he's talking about, he's trying to reference an appellate court judge who probably no one ever remembers from 70 years ago, saying we're basically at that point where justices are acting like this. I think we're pretty far removed from that sort of justice saying anything like that. And like you mentioned before, like Clarence Thomas, like, do you think Clarence Thomas holds that view about interracial marriage and that different races are on different continents because God wanted them that way? Or Justice Alito, who is, has grandparents who are from Italy? I don't think so. Like, is that what he's trying to say? Is that sort of judge is now on the Supreme Court? And then people who don't really understand what he's saying are probably listening to that. And there's a girl in the background who, give her credit for holding up that sign for so long, because my arm would have fallen off at this point, the way she's holding it. And she's sitting back there and she's just doing her unapproving shaking the head like, And she probably thinks that's what the Supreme Court thinks. Like, this current Supreme Court thinks that that's what they think, is that races should be segregated by continents.
Yeah, it's just
You're
it's
like
really
speechless. You're like, you're just
it's
speechless at the thought.
Yeah, it's just yeah. That was pretty much my entire thing. I wondered what kind of comment. Well, it turns out like I'll always have something to say because I'm pretty opinionated, but I was pretty speechless throughout this entire presser.
Yeah. Speechless is a good way to put it. I was flabbergasted. I like that word, flabbergasted.
The Supreme Court. Just think about what President Trump did during his just 40,
We always got to talk about Trump.
31
We always got to talk about Trump. Oh, we always got to bring back. Just remember how horrible things were under President Trump. Just remember. Watch my finger. Watch this finger. About things were so bad under Trump. Well, okay, and he doesn't really. Does he? Let's see what he goes into about President Trump. Does he say what was so horrible about President Trump, or he just plays the fear mongering card?
Federal judges, 84%, 84% white, 76% male. Young federal judges, 54 of them on the appellate court. This is not just about the 3 on the U.S. Supreme Court. Pay attention, America. They're coming after you next. That's not hyperbole. It is not hyperbole. Watch this space. If privacy is not constitutionally protected, this opens up panoply of issues. So this is a profound moment. And yes, we're not going to be defeated. Certainly not here in the state of California. In fact, we are going further. And while it's well established in statute since
I can't get over that.
2002
He can't button his jacket.
that we are reproductive freedom state, we are going to enshrine that, codify that, as we should in the state constitution. And I want to just applaud the leadership in the Assembly and the Senate, Tony Atkins, Anthony Rendon, for not only supporting that effort, but embracing it in partnership with Planned Parenthood and its affiliates. And we'll be presenting that to the voters this November as an affirmative step to codify California's leadership. I want to remind folks, we are not just the richest state, fifth largest economy in the world, $3.36 trillion economy. We're the most populous state.
Richest state, but always one of the highest in income inequality as well.
Yeah.
The last time I checked, I think we have income inequality that is on par with like Guatemala. So the rich in California continue to get rich. The highest salaries I read from Cal Matters was executive and directors made around $200,000 a year. You know who was right behind them as the highest earners in California?
Who?
State legislators. So you had executives and directors, and then you had state legislators are the next biggest group of people to make over $115,000 a year. And if you know, here in San Diego County, I think it's over like 200,000 as a supervisor you make. So you make some pretty good coin as a politician in California. Richest state always likes to brag about the surplus and how much money we have. Can't drive down a road without avoiding a pothole in a place like San Diego where there shouldn't be potholes. But yeah, let's keep bragging about how we're the richest state and we can spend money to fly people and travel people here for free abortions.
Yeah, meanwhile, we lost a congressional seat because the 2022 census showed that our population declined for the first time in history. You know.
Yeah, and more people are leaving, more people are heading out, heading for the exits. And this is something just popped into my head. Everyone's talking about Elon Musk and why did he spend $44 billion to buy Twitter? He could have solved world hunger, right? That's what everyone said. Oh, he could have solved world hunger at $44 billion. Imagine what California could do with its surplus and all its money it has just for California homeless and hungry. Have we solved that issue? No, haven't solved that issue, but he likes to talk about how we're the richest state and have this huge surplus. So always, he's weaving in the themes. The themes are these white supremacist, evil Supreme Court justices, including Clarence Thomas, who is another black face of white supremacy in his mind. President Trump, he's out there. President Trump remember how scary it was under President Trump? And then he has to talk about we're obviously the city on the hill. California is so great that everyone should be like us. Look at me. I'm running the best state in the entire nation because we're so rich. We have all this money. We're going to let people come and get abortions for free. We'll pay your Greyhound bus ticket. It'll be great. We'll have medical tourism for abortions. It sounds like he's getting ready for a presidential run, in my mind. But we already knew that. He's definitely getting ready for a presidential run.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's 2024 or 2028, he's gearing up. So.
Oh, yeah. His body is ready.
Yeah, he's ready. He's got to work on the buttoning the jacket, though, if he's going to be on presidential campaign tours. No, the next thing, the presidential campaign look, when he goes to Iowa, he's going to ditch the jacket, ditch the tie, unbutton, and then roll up the sleeves. That's the politicians have two modes, if you ever noticed. They have, I'm dressed, I'm in my suit, I'm ready to go, I'm here for business, I'm an important figure. And then when they're out there on the campaign trail, the second mode they have is no tie, no jacket, they roll up the sleeves, and that's I'm ready to get to work. That's I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty and get to work. That's the other one.
I bet
just
you
wanna
would.
Yeah,
Go ahead. I was gonna say like, oh, and my one tip is when he rolls to Virginia, he's probably gonna add the sweater vest with that look.
Oh, yeah, the sweater vest. Sometimes you just want to see politicians dress normally, like just dress like a normal human being. Like try and relate to people. You don't always have to be in a suit or like in a button down with your sleeves rolled up and look so formal.
I
Um,
agree. I
I mean,
agree.
I guess he tries with his jeans and his pullover that he likes to wear all the time, but we're getting off track now. We're talking too much about his style and what he's trying to giving him style tips for when he runs for president.
And the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. And we punch above our weight. This is not a small, isolated state, California. This is a state where we estimate 8.6 million California residents are of reproductive age.
Does that include men as well?
The birthing
I
people.
does that include? I want to know. Does 8 point whatever number you just spit out include birthing people, or is it just women? That's the fact I want to know because that's very transphobic if you're only counting women as those who are of reproductive age.
Oh my gosh.
8.6 million.
8.6
That's more
million.
than dozens of states combined.
That's a lot of
The
people who can get
consequences of
abortions.
what we do here is profound
Think
and
about that.
pronounced.
8 million people getting abortions.
Nor are we naive what to expect, not just with the dozen or so states that have these trigger laws and the likelihood anywhere from 25, 26 or so states, the majority of states in America may roll back these freedoms and protections and criminalize doctors, criminalize caregivers, criminalize women. But we recognize California's unique status to stand above that and stand tall and stand out. And our responsibility, we've always felt it, our responsibilities to others, not just to the few, 40 million proud Californians, but to others. And so we'll have to do more. We'll have to do better. And we've been doing that. We've not sat back passively. We've been anticipating. Sadly, we've been anticipating this. In fact, we just sat down. I said, we had a meeting, I think it was 6 or 7 months ago. We laid this out, and not one, every single thing that's happened has happened. I guess we just didn't know it was Alito. We knew he was part of it. So we've been preparing.
What is it? Why Alito? I didn't catch that. I have no idea why. He's like, we just didn't know it'd be Alito.
I think
Why?
it's because like it was like wasn't like the leaked draft opinion like from him or something.
Yeah, well, he wrote the majority
Yeah,
opinion, but I'm wondering why he's saying Alito. Maybe because I guess he figured it would be easier politically to if it was like Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, or Amy Coney Barrett.
yeah.
If it was one of those who wrote the opinion, then they could say, look, we told you Trump was going to be in office and he appointed the Supreme Court justices. And look what they did. They overturned Roe v. Wade. They wrote the
Yeah.
opinion on it. So I guess they're pissed off because it's Alito who was appointed by President Bush. I guess I guess they were waiting for the political expediency of they wanted it to be one of the 3 Trump appointees.
Yeah.
We've been doing more so we can do better. Protect the health, protect the safety of women and girls, particularly those of color. And let's just disabuse ourselves that all those men up there in fancy suits and all their wealth and status and privilege, this is going to have a
Speak for
profound
yourself.
effect on their lives because their loved
Seriously.
ones, their family
White
members,
man of
get
privilege
on
and
Southwest
wealth.
or JetBlue,
The man who went to French Laundry.
from one of those blue states.
Top suit.
How about those folks that can't even afford a Greyhound bus ticket? How about all of those women and girls raped in states where they don't even make an exception for rape? Talk about extremists. rape and incest. That's how extreme the Republican Party is in the United States of America. You want extremism. Rape and incest. They don't even make an exception. How many young women and girls, maybe someone you know or love?
Not to get really off topic here, rape, I can understand the argument. If incest is willing and consensual, what's the argument there?
I think yeah, I think an important note is like when it comes to like those cases, they're less than 1%. Like it actually isn't as much as people think cuz um
Mhm.
like it is something that I also encourage even conservatives or Republicans to dive deep into because I feel like it is a very very complicated issue and even like for myself like I'm also still learning like I believe life begins at conception, but like for women, like they speak about like, oh, like at this week, this is when, you know, this is when the heartbeat begins and all that. Like those are things that I still need to like kind of know for myself, just like as someone who wants to have children someday. But that fact I could tell you because when I was learning more about like the abortion issue, that was certainly like a objection that I had or something that was on my heart. Like, oh, like what about these instances? And then I came to find out they're actually not as much as people claim. And even still, like I think that regardless, it still brings back to like the heartbeat of issue, no pun intended, which is that like we have to ask ourselves when does life begin? And it begins at conception. And so if people were to take those instances and I guess like go back to the root issue of it, which is like when does life ultimately begin? Then it brings into that other scientifical question. And then also it brings into like the other moral facet, which is like, at what point do we have a right to say that we have the right to murder a child? And the answer is no. Even in those extreme circumstances, we don't have a right to really dictate the value of a life, whether how it was conceived, even in those instances where it is extremely grave and, I guess in some lights, somewhat unfortunate. So even though those issues are obviously extremely extremely nuanced and very very difficult to have, they are important to have, but I think it is also important to note that it doesn't dictate the value of a human life no matter how one is conceived, and it's not our moral diction to really dictate if a life is more moral or not based off how it was conceived. But for the sake of like Newsom, how he's demonizing it, it really is, in my opinion, he's going after the minority cases. So in my mind, he claims he's for minorities. He claims he's trying to stand up for women. In my mind, he's demonizing those women in those minority categories and
Mm.
bringing them to light those demons that they went through. When it came to those decisions about to choose life or not.
Hmm. Well said.
Finds out 6 weeks and a day later, 15 weeks and a day later, that they're pregnant. They don't have the ability.
There was a
Money,
successful button
come to
and then a
another state.
successful unbutton.
Strengthening the family. I'll end on this. I also find it just the height of perversity and absurdity that these folks, A, lay claim to freedom, but perhaps more insidiously suggest that they're pro-life.
I just feel like at some point he hasn't. I'm surprised he hasn't stopped and started bawling at one point.
Yeah, I'm surprised maybe he's trying to avoid the crying because he still has to try and appeal to those voters in Iowa in a couple of years. He can't cry too much, otherwise people in Iowa will probably make fun of him. That always haunted Cory Booker when he ran for president, was that he cried way too much. But again, it's funny that he's kind of lambasting the other side and saying, for a side that's all about freedom, it's ironic that they're pushing this. Well, if we're weighing out who was for freedom and who's not for freedom, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but again, let's look back to 2020 and part of 2021. You were certainly, sir, you were certainly not for freedom at all. So let's keep the pro freedom talk to a minimum. Just because you're pro freedom on this issue does not make you pro freedom on everything. So
I
you know what they say, those in glass houses.
yeah.
Every single one of these folks that are out there trumpeting and championing this decision have consistently opposed prenatal care support, consistently opposed child care, consistently oppose paid family leave, consistently oppose all things to actually strengthen the family and provide the support for someone to live their lives out loud, to support working moms. Consistently, the one group of people that over and over and over again oppose all of those supports, and they claim to be pro-life, they're pro-birth. That's all this is about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people assume if you phrased it that way and said, "Are you pro-birth?" I think a lot of people would say they're pro-birth. Are you pro-birth?
Yeah, of course I'm pro-birth.
Yeah, I don't think if you walked around and said like, "Are you pro-birth?" people are gonna be like, "I'm anti-birth. I don't want anyone to ever be born. I hope no one's ever born."
Yeah.
It's a weird way to state it.
Yeah.
And the way he phrases it, that these people are always against paid family leave and expanded childcare. Well, it's because of the way they're delivering those things. I personally wouldn't want my child to be in 18 years of public schooling or government run daycare and schooling. And that's basically what they want. They want your child from the youngest age possible. I don't know what age do you start sending kids to daycare? I'm not really up on that. 3, 4, or something like that.
Something like that.
So they want your kids from that age all the way through high school until they're 18. And I think
Yeah.
that's the straw man argument, is that it's not necessarily they're against that. I don't think you should be against daycare or having a place where working families can send their children. I think people are mostly against government run daycare and government required parental leave.
Yeah, it's more of like the nuances, like when they discuss family leave, I think it's more of like if the people that look, typically the Republicans, when they look at the meat and potatoes of the legislation they're proposing, it's basically like anti-family when it boils down to it. It's basically any attempt to kind of strip away the parental rights and make it more about the government is the head of the family and not necessarily like the parents making these decisions. Like it's basically more government, which I mean, again, like if there was any kind of like black and white contrast between a Democrat and Republican, like the basics are like Republicans typically aren't for more taxes. They typically are for less government. You know, they typically are for more gun rights. Like those are just very basic kitchen table issues. I think everyone knows, even if you're not into politics. So yeah. Newsom's language is very, very colorful, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's just you give them credit because the way they frame the argument does make it sound like if someone who's not paying attention, oh yeah, maybe they are. Why are they against daycare?
Yeah.
Well, no, because he's leaving out that we're against like federally mandated Department of Education daycare because our public schools in California are just absolutely killing it. Would you want to send your little child to a California run daycare? I don't think so when you look at what we're in the bottom 45 when it comes to math and reading. So let's pump the brakes on, maybe California should just focus on making sure their schools are better rather than expanding to daycare.
Yep.
It's the pro-birth party. And then you are on your own, consistently opposing all of those supports. Hell, they don't even believe in climate science. Talk to me about being pro-life. Spare me.
Also, if you're So you're has what's the best way to kind of state this? You're free. Your party is for basically unfettered abortion. Yet you're also for unfettered daycare as well. Just to be clear, you want both. Am I? That's that. I don't know. That seems weird to me, but I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Like, yeah, there's pro birth and like there's pro life. I don't know. That was weird to me. I don't know where I was going with that point, but maybe someone could figure out what I was trying to say. Put it in the comments.
Your body, your choice. It's a hell of a moment to live in. Like you say,
Successful button.
We will stand tall, we will stand firm, and we will affirm the currently constitutionally protected rights of women and girls, their reproductive rights and freedoms in California.
Even though he pointed out that this was not in the constitutional rights, so that's why they're introducing constitutional amendment to include it in the state constitution. But okay.
Yeah.
By punching above our weight, working with other like-minded leaders and governors and legislatures all across this country. And we're not going to roll over. We will not back down. And we will continue to fill in the gaps and address the disparities that continue to persist, even in a state like ours. Even in California, women and girls still have to travel long distances to access their reproductive rights. Even in California.
It's a big state.
California, though we're changing it, you still have women and girls that can't afford the copays for procedures and care. That will change in January, even in California. Can you imagine how so many others are suffering in all these other states? So this is a powerful moment. Personally, 4 young kids, I had to explain to my kids. I had some other friends of mine said I had a hard conversation because the first conversation, very young kids, about what Roe is, what
this feels like those Twitters or those tweets that are now constantly like made fun of about like somebody says, "Oh, my 5-year-old came running into the room and asked, what does the Ukraine invasion mean for NATO alliance and whether we're strong or weak on the world stage?" And I responded, "It shows that we're weak thanks to President Trump." And then we cried together. Like that story makes it sound like I sat with my children and explained what Roe v. Wade meant, and we sat and we cried together. I don't think kids really care about abortion. And that sounds like a really weird topic to have. It sounds like a weird conversation to have with your young children. So
no, I agree 100%. I don't think kids care about abortion or this issue at all. It's very complicated. It's not even interesting in the slightest, to be honest with you. And then the second thing is, like, of all the things to like sit down and like have a talking with your kids, I just think, again, like, even though I'm pro-life, I always aim to be as delicate and as compassionate, empathetic as possible, because there is a lot to it, and I'm always very willing. In fact, I have changed people's minds on this issue, and so I take it very seriously, and I try to go about it as delicate as possible. However, I'm not going to sit here and lie and be like, yeah, like, I think this is a really great discussion to have. Like, imagine like sitting down as a father and having to sit with your daughter and be like, yeah, it really sucks that, you know, you're not going to be able to get an abortion on demand. Like, you know, like, just even like the people that are more pro-choice, or even if like when we talk about the nuances about when abortion should be legal or illegal or whatnot, you know, there is some kind of boundary that there's some kind of boundary or humanity people have when discussing out, even like the people who are more pro-choice. Like, at least they're going to be like, yeah, but even though I think the government shouldn't be quote unquote involved, and, you know, I just think that it's still not birth control. Like, they at least have some kind of like regulation, right? Like, there's some kind of elements where like, hey, like, I just don't think abortion is birth control, even though I believe in it or whatever, right? And so when I think about what Newsom said, it's just like, he's basically depicting like the most inhumane position that one can have, even if you're someone that is adamantly pro-choice. And I think it's disgusting and it's immoral.
Mm-hmm. Just to everyone in the comments, I do see you. I see all your questions. I see the questions are lighting up. We're going to get to them in a little bit. I do want to finish up. We'll finish up in a little couple minutes because there's like 5 or 6 more minutes where it gets really interesting, and then we can go to questions.
Privacy is, choice. Those are hard conversations with young kids. But they're conversations we're all having that we prayed we never would have to have.
I mean, they're hard conversations with little kids because I don't think little kids understand what the heck you're talking about.
Because we thought we were living in a country that was expanding freedoms and choice and providing sanctity, not only of those decisions to be advanced in privacy, but also protecting people's right to privacy as a foundational principle in our democracy and republic. So I'm grateful for,
again, respecting the right to privacy, just not vaccine mandates. Just don't talk about those. When it comes to that, just don't talk about that. We can inject your body with whatever we want.
Whatever we want.
Whatever we want, because we made it law. So
all the incredible work of Planned Parenthood and all its 108 affiliates in the state of California. I'm really proud of our legislature, proud of our legislative leadership. We look forward to going in front of the voters, affirming this constitutional right in our state, in the Constitution, not just statute, because we now recognize the vulnerability of the moment we're living in, and continue to work with others all across this country and continue our efforts to call out the hypocrisy that we see across this nation.
I apologize. I turned my volume all the way up. I couldn't hear what this guy's saying. So I tried to make out what the questions are.
No, and I think it's the right question. It's a hard one for me because this is so much more pronounced and profound than just sort of an electoral frame. Though elections do have consequences, and we saw that with Donald Trump.
Oh my God.
I guess the question had something to do with, do you think this will have an effect on the midterm elections? And he tried to skirt around it. As opposed to him just coming out and saying, no, absolutely, we are taking full advantage of this and running with this for the midterms because we have nothing else to run on this midterm. So this is going to be our issue.
Putting my political hat, I hope so. Guys, this is never happened in our lifetime. We're taking away rights that have been affirmed over and over again and well established. They are taking them away. Wake up, America.
Nobody's taking away any right. I don't understand this. And he keeps saying rights as in plural, but I don't know what rights that are being taken away since states can decide on their own. It's not like it'll be illegal in California. So
yeah.
Wake up to who you're electing. I love that appalling silence. It's all about it's this headline of this leak, the right to privacy against leaks, I guess, that matter more than the damn decision that is apparently pending. They have a hard time even defending this moment when they're wholly responsible for this moment. And so I hope people hold these elected officials to account, and I hope they consider the positions of those they are supporting or opposing in this election. And I certainly hope it has an impact, but that's not what this should be about foundationally, because it's so much more profound than just a situational election.
It's so much more profound than the election, which we're going to take full advantage of to help win elections. We're going to make it seem really, really important.
Yeah, even though I have a feeling this really wouldn't impact. I think that they're really, really trying very hard to stop the impending red wave that's likely going to happen. And I just don't, I think that, I mean, that's just my theory on why the leak happened. Otherwise, why would it? Like, out of all the cases that this could have happened, mind you, they still have the Marshal of Court and the FBI. So rest assured, we will find out who leaked it. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
but it boggles my mind of all the things, of all the cases where that happened, had to be this one around this time. Like it's just really, it boggles my mind to me. So in my this is my theory, not it's not, there's no facts yet, but my theory, I think it was an attempt to kind of, stop Republicans from getting a lot of massive wins. And I think that it's not gonna help the Democrats at all. I think if anything, it's making it worse. Like they're dying on their hill. They're digging in their claws, and it's really kind of astounding, the train wreck that they have.
And no one on the left ever talks about how this is unprecedented, that there was a leak. Like Adam Schiff said, I don't give a damn about the leak. I care about the opinion. Well, you should care a little bit about the leak, because it's never happened before in Supreme Court history that they've leaked a decision like this. It does kind of create a trust issue with the Supreme Court. And this is what we're seeing right now, is exactly why they don't leak opinions, and you don't see them before they're actually final opinions, because the idea is they're supposed to be decided based on the law and the facts, not on public sentiment. So
Yeah, agreed.
Well, we've been doing that. We don't, we didn't, I guess we've been doing a lot. Let me back up. I think, it's always moments like this. What are you going to do next? But I really think it's important to talk about what we've been doing pretty consistently. I mean, no other state in the union is doing more to protect.
I think the question is, what is California doing
That's why I wanted to
in response to this?
Work we were doing in anticipation of this, because it led to a series of initiatives and bills, led to a new task force that was created, went to a series of recommendations, including dealing with co-pays that we enshrined in our budget that will go into effect in January. We went to the expansion of support for providers, supplemental support, $500 million that we provided to support our caregivers. We went to part and parcel of our $1.7 billion workforce ask of the legislature, because we have issues of recruiting and retaining.
I noticed all behind him. I mean, I'm no biologist, but I noticed that it appears to me that there are a bunch of women behind him. I don't see any men behind him, right?
No birthing people.
There were no birthing people behind him this whole time. So I think that's pretty interesting. I think there was a guy in the top left, but maybe they grabbed him and said, like, we're going to pull you out of the frame because you're not a woman. So
workforce. It's gone to a series of other recommendations that are going through a legislative process, in a budget where just in 2 weeks, I'll be putting out, for example, supports for a new portal, a new website to provide culturally competent access to people across the spectrum, so that they know their rights and they know where those supports lie in the state. So we are initiating all of the above in ways that no other state has ever done. We also, and it's important to know, and I want to be sensitive about this, but when people come in for care, we take care of them, period. That goes to your question. Regardless of their ability to pay, regardless of their status across the spectrum. And that's been well established here in the States, a principle we hold dear. And I should just note the 108 affiliates of Planned Parenthood and Planned Parenthood provide care.
He's talking about a lot of gobbledygook, but there's a line in here that
folks, meaning
I think cracked me up.
This is not just about the issues.
It's coming up. I know it's within the
thousands and thousands of people
in the 18-minute mark.
Outside the state, not just for abortion as well, that we're already providing. And so that's baked into who we are and what we do. And to the extent that that need will grow, as a dozen or 20 plus states restrict that access, California will do its best to provide for as many people as we can.
Again, can't hear the question. So if you're listening to dead air, it's because we can't hear the question.
Know that they matter, we care. I hope we're a little bit of a beacon of hope, a bright light, that they're not alone. They shouldn't be scared. They shouldn't feel isolated. I want folks to know in California they shouldn't feel alone. Access to reproductive health is legal in this state. I want to remind all Californians, regardless of what you're seeing up in the nightly news, the cross currents of that debate here in the state of California. We're doing more and providing much deeper and better service. And I want folks to know across this country that we're going to fight for them as well, not just here in the state of California. Success leaves clues. California, as I said, punches above its weight. California has a profound impact on policy across the nation on a spectrum of issues. And I also, may I say this, and perhaps I'm getting a little off, for all those businesses, the idea that you're moving your companies to states and then you have to pay for your employees to travel back to the states that you made them move, maybe they should start reconsidering some of those decisions as well.
To all those businesses who moved out of California, I say this to you. The one benefit you overlooked with your employees is unfettered access to abortions. Did you think about that when you moved? I don't think you did. No, you're right. I think all these businesses are going to come rushing back to California because of their stance on abortion. And I don't know what he means by they have to fly people back to California if they've already moved to like states like Texas or Florida. Like, if they've moved, they're there. They're not sending anyone back to California. But
Yeah.
I guess that will cause all these businesses to come rushing back. Not the tax rate or the regulations or anything like that. That will cause them to come back.
Yeah, they're like, yes, we can finally add abortions to our benefits for our employers. Yes.
You know, that was the sticking point when we found every new hiree, whether they were well qualified or not, they said, do you give free and unfettered access to abortion? And because we're in Texas, we said no. And they left. And we have nobody. And there's nobody to build our Tesla cars. And I think we should move back to California for that specific reason.
Well, this is
an
issue across the spectrum. At the end of the day, for women and girls, this is an economic issue. Make no mistakes. That's why this is about equality. This is about women's rights. It's so foundational. Sorry, Tucker Carlson. It is. Deeply. And that's why the issue of economics also needs to be a big part of this.
Sorry, Tucker Carlson. I'm hoping it's coming up soon. It's pretty funny.
Has anyone been paying attention to what the hell's happened in this country in the last 6-9 months?
I think a lot of people have been paying attention. Noodles. A lot of people have been paying attention to what's been going on in this country for the past 9. How about the past 2 years? We've been talking about what the hell is happening in this country, specifically in California. We've been paying attention what's happening in this state. So, yes, a lot of people have been paying attention, and I think that will bear out in the midterms. I would say a lot more people who didn't used to pay attention are now paying attention. So,
because of him
specifically, I think a lot more people are paying attention.
Yeah.
What that guy DeSantis or something? Santos?
Okay. Just that was it. Just stop. Just stop the facade. You know who Ron DeSantis is, okay? This cute little game of that Governor DeSanto, I don't know, whatever his name is. You know who he is. And because you've tweeted at him and you constantly tweet about what happened with the Don't Say Gay bill and Disney and what's going on in Florida with how they were free under COVID. So I know he was trying to be cute and do the little slight of like, you're not important enough for me to know what your name is. You know who Ron DeSantis is, okay? He's likely going to be your opponent in 2028. So it just pump the brakes on the faux, I don't know who you are, you're below me attitude. I when I heard that, I actually laughed out loud.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. It reminded me of when he did a presser and he was talking about the recall or something. It was like after he won and he was like, oh, it slipped my mind, like, and he basically like pretended, acted like he didn't know who Larry Elder was. It's just like, bro, you just raised over $10 million for a recall to do ads against him. Like, you know who Larry Elder is?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what I thought of when I heard that. It was hilarious.
Yeah. This is one of those issues where either you're playing dumb because you want to talk down to him. That's fine. You're trying to do a cute little slight at Ron DeSantis, the polar opposite of you when it comes to governors.
Yeah.
Or you're incompetent to the point that you don't know one of the most popular governors in the United States.
Yeah.
That's your two choices. Either you don't know who he is because you're incompetent and you're a moron, or you're just playing this cutesy little game. But when he said it was DeSanto, it's like, you got his name right the first time. Okay, you don't have to pretend like you don't know who he is.
Yeah.
Doing in Florida, the attacks on the LGBTQ community. I mean, they're going after now social emotional learning. I mean, CRT. I mean, just completely made up out of whole cloth. I mean, if there was any state that has CRT, I guess
CRT is social and emotional learning. Okay.
California. So now it's about social emotional learning. They're coming after that next. They're banning books. They're banning books. This is 2022.
Check your watch.
Anyone paying attention? What the hell's going on? It's not just about January 6th. Voter suppression, police forces. Can you imagine?
Oh yeah, you got to get January 6th.
We got to talk about January 6th.
This is like a drinking game. You know, every time he mentions Trump, every time he mentions January 6th, anything like that, he's got to get it in there.
Yeah.
A private police force to send down to LA to make sure we're monitoring local elections. This is extremism at a scale and level I never experienced in my lifetime. Wake up, America. That's all this is about. Wake up. And so
there's something wrong with the idea of people.
Future ex-governor.
There's something wrong with the idea of people making sure that election laws are enforced. There's something wrong with that. That's radical in California. Election laws.
I'm clutching my pearls.
Yeah, election laws. We don't need those stinking election laws.
Poor kids. Wake up. And I say that as a father. I say that as a Californian, as an American. Wake up, America.
Wake up, America.
Because rolling back your fundamental constitutional rights has a profound impact across the spectrum of issues. It's a foundational issue. Everything's built off that fundamental right, freedom. I mean, if guys like me were getting pregnant every day, does anyone think this? This is comical.
Transphobe. I'm sorry, what? Transphobe say what? I thought men could not get pregnant. Oh, but now because men are making the decision about Roe, now it's pregnant. Men can't get pregnant now because it's hard to wrap your head around the logic. You get whiplash. They move back and forth so fast. So
I know it's hard to keep track.
All right. Well, I didn't want to go on too long. It does go on for another 10 minutes. There are a bunch of questions piling up. So if you have some time, do you want to answer some questions from the chat?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay. I know the people in the chat have been waiting patiently, and thank you for sticking with us through the whole press conference. There's a lot.
Bearing it with us.
Yeah, I hope we tried to make it as enjoyable as possible for you. Some people are like, I wouldn't watch this stuff if it wasn't for you. I wouldn't sit through any of this stuff, but it's important to sit through this stuff. So Amy asked, what can we do as taxpayers if we don't want our money paying for these abortion vacations? He's suggesting. Newsom makes me want to vomit. Well, in terms of how to stop vomiting when you look at Newsom, I don't have an answer for that. Dramamine might work, but what can we do as taxpayers if we don't want our tax money? I would say there's likely, it would have to be a unique argument of someone to make a legal argument of whether or not this is an infringement on someone's religious beliefs. I'm trying. I'll have to look back in the Supreme Court archive. But I believe there is a Supreme Court case where you can't force people to use their tax money to support religions or beliefs that they don't necessarily agree with. So it's kind of like the whole issue about like, can we send taxpayer money to parochial schools? That might be, it might be along those lines. So hopefully there's a brave attorney out there somewhere, and there's a brave litigant who wants to kind of take Newsom to court on this in terms of like in federal court. It could work. Who knows? And if it gets up to this specific Supreme Court, then there may be a chance to say like you can't use taxpayer money to basically give free and unfettered abortions if you don't believe in it on a religious stance.
Yeah.
SD Sartor says, do you think states will have actual outright bans on abortion because whether we like it or not, we don't introduce many deterrents like sex ed or promotion of or better foster programs? I don't think it's not going to be an outright ban, and that's the big misnomer that the left is pushing. They're making it seem like if this happens, abortions will be absolutely illegal across the country, and that California and Newsom's trying to make it seem like he's doing some brave thing by standing up to the federal government. It's just going to go back to the states, and states like California will have the ability to do whatever they want. States like Texas will be able to do whatever they want, and that's basically it. It's not going to ban abortion. It just doesn't protect it on the federal level. And if the federal government, for some reason, wants to enshrine an actual law, then they can go ahead and do that. But that was always the critique of Roe v. Wade, is that the court took the power out of the elected representatives' hands.
Yeah, I think if there are red states, obviously this is kind of like their green light to do more of what they want, of course. And if you're in a blue state, it won't impact it. It really depends on the state legislature, because they are the ones that make these big decisions like this. So it depends on, the demographics of the state. But overturning Roe v. Wade would certainly help, especially if you're someone that is an advocate for life.
Yeah, and I think the point that even Ginsburg was trying to make is that, and this is what, if you're going all the way back to the founders, the reason that we have so many layers of government between the state legislators and federal government is that it really comes down to, it's supposed to be local politics, that local politicians represent you the best out of anybody. And if you go to an area where the politicians don't represent you, I mean, for many Californians, that's what it feels like every single day. Many of the politicians don't represent you. And if it comes to a point where you have two choices, you can either get involved and try and change your elected representatives, or you can move to places that do have elected representatives that represent you more. And I think that was always sort of the intent, was if it's important to your legislators who represent you, it'll go one way or the other. If not, I mean, that's really how we're supposed to have our voice in this. Not the Supreme Court just whole cloth legislating for the entire country. That was never the intent. Let's see. SD Sartor follows up. Eventually, they will begin to see more problems if they don't allow exceptions for abortions, such as rape, life-threatening, and a decent amount of time for abortion. The current Florida bill is the perfect mix between pro-life and pro-choice. I haven't read the Florida bill in its entirety, so I don't know the details of it. But I'm sure most bills that are being introduced at this point that are considered really restrictive are 30, 40 years ago would have been incredibly liberal. So to put it one way, like abortion wasn't really decriminalized in California until the 60s. So if that gives you an idea of back in the 70s, abortion was just starting to be accepted. And bills like Texas or Florida would have been really radical back in the day. But now they're seen as the most conservative and restrictive.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone said, But how else could they spark the riot season? They need a leak. Yeah, they
the
needed
summer. Well, the
something.
summer of love is coming, so
Yeah, the Summer of Love's on its way back. Summer of Love tour is ready to launch pretty soon. So get ready for that. And I don't think that's going to help the left either to see Antifa and anything like that out there and making noise. And and I still don't understand how it's okay if Antifa shows up on the steps of the Supreme Court screaming they want to burn the effing place down. That's fine. That's just part of protecting democracy. But people who were let into the Capitol building by security guards and wandered around, that was an insurrection, right?
oh, and we would be amiss if we did not mention our girl, Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, my goodness.
she
With her
she
her acting was spot on.
yeah, like, you know, she does her thing, you know, starts clutching her pearls, and all I could think of, like, I see her clips online is insurrection. This is okay. But whatever happened on the darkest day since 9/11, whatever Trump said, that was an insurrection. But okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so if she's running around saying stuff like that, is she now going to be brought up for inciting insurrection against the U.S. government? One of my favorite, and I say that sarcastically, Marjorie Taylor Greene was actually cleared. I saw before we hopped on the podcast in her trial. The judge said they did not prove that she had anything to do with the insurrection. Off topic, but I thought that was pretty interesting. That we're now at the point where the left is actively taking politicians to court to try and paint them as insurrectionists, even though they have absolutely no evidence that they were insurrectionists.
Yeah.
So I can only see the ads now are going to be an ominous voice. And they'll show footage of January 6th. They'll show footage of Donald Trump. They'll show footage of the 3 justices who were selected by Donald Trump. And they'll say, your rights are being stripped out from under you. Something like that. And then it'll just be in that like red overtone of like scary. They're coming to get you. So vote Democrat.
You should be a Democrat consultant, Phil. You would
I
make
should,
this
yeah.
cycle.
Yeah, I should. I mean, I would make so much money. I'd be like, guys, this is the idea of what you're going to go with. And they'd be like, great, here's $100,000 for your idea. It'd be an easy life. But all right, I think that's it for the questions. Any final thoughts before we wrap up for today? On the whole thing?
Just a couple things. The first thing is that I do think that it is going to be interesting to see this dynamic in California regardless, because I think we both agree 100% because we know how this works, and that, you know, when the decision gets finalized, because what leaked is simply a draft. So I think the judges should just, you know, come forth and end it right now. I just feel like the longer they drag this on, the worse it's getting. That's my opinion. Regardless, even though I know in California it wouldn't necessarily impact as someone that is pro-life, I still think it's still going to be very interesting to see how political candidates in this cycle answer for it, because unfortunately, you know, as touchy as this issue is, it is a political issue. Some people say like, oh, like it shouldn't be political. Well, I'm sorry, but it's in legislation, and you know, there's laws, so it is political. Like, I know it's touchy, but it's a political issue. So I think it's going to be interesting to see in this cycle how California conservatives and Republicans are forced to take an issue or a stance on it when it's not relevant. Like, for example, I know people that ran for school board here in San Diego, and they got asked about their stance on abortion. It's like, school boards don't answer that, but now I think it's going to be interesting how people are going to have to be forced to, you know, have an answer for it. And if I was advising someone, I would simply tell them that, like, if it's not relevant to your job position, you shouldn't be saying anything, because then you're just going to get pushed to a trap. That's what I would advise a candidate. But if it is going to be brought up, like, for example, if you're running for the state assembly, they are introducing laws for abortion, so you do have to give your stance on it. If you're a Republican, I would just be honest and say, hey, we do have a veto-proof majority. If I was pro-life, I would vote for life. However, just know that there is a veto-proof majority. My goal is to get in office, make sure I cast my vote for life, and I want to help make sure there's more Republicans in there so we can, add balance to legislature. So we're not, an abortion on demand state, just things like that, right? So if it's relevant, obviously you are going to have to be forced to take a stance, even if you weren't going to before. And then I would advise, if you are running for office and abortion is not in that, like, don't bring it up. It's already going to make it worse. But even, like, for example, for statewide, Lonnie Chan, who's running for controller, like, there's people that are pounding him to give a stance on it. And he released a statement that basically, like, he said it was basically alluding he's not going to, give an opinion about it because he's right. And that, like, trying to be a fiscal watchdog has nothing to do with abortion. He's smart. Like, he knows this is the play it's going to give. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays into California politics, because it is a political issue. And then my last thing before I hand it off to you is that I didn't always have the same stances on abortion. So I encourage everyone that's listening, definitely pursue the truth. I recommend looking at Lila Rose and Abby Johnson. They're two of the best thought leaders in this movement for pro-life, for life. Abby Johnson has a memoir and a movie called Unplanned, because she used to work for Planned Parenthood, and then she saw what an abortion is, and that changed her life completely. Lila Rose also did, like, investigative reporting on Planned Parenthood. So they have organizations of that. So I recommend checking out Live Action. I recommend checking Save the Storks. And then I know there's Students for Life. There's another organization that does that. So I definitely just recommend for you to, open your heart to this issue. It is very, very sensitive, but, I just think that it's important, the issues of family and children. And if you have any questions or if you have, opinions or want to have a conversation about this topic, you can contact me on social media. Like I've mentioned, I've changed people's opinions about this issue, and I'm very opinionated about it, but I think you'd be surprised how incredibly compassionate I am about it too. So if you are really interested in learning more about it, then, hit me up in the DMs. I'm happy to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, I think I've said a lot of what I want to say. Amy brings up a point: get out and vote in the primary election. The primary election, very important for people who are not aware, is coming up June 7th, correct?
That's correct. And then the mail-in ballots, you're going to be getting them next week. So just be on the lookout. But you should be receiving it next week or in the next week or two.
Yeah, so for people who aren't aware, make sure you vote in the primary. And especially here in California, that is really crucial because it is a jungle primary. So it's the two top vote getters. It's not automatically R and D. You're not always going to get the two choices. So when people say, how come I never get to choose a Republican? Well, because the Republican didn't make it past the primary most of the time. So if that's something you want to see, make sure you go out and get people interested and go vote, and keep an eye out for it. It's June 7th. Keep an eye on your mail. You should probably already gotten your sample ballot and all that. And I got a sample ballot, and then I got the candidate statements. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. But my final thoughts are, obviously they wanted all the big hitters to come out and say something about this, especially on the left. Elizabeth Warren was running around DC like a mad woman, screaming and yelling. She had really lost it. And then you have a bunch of other candidates and Democratic politicians who are also coming out and saying everything about this. Governor Newsom. The one thing that scares me is that they are now turning Roe into an excuse to achieve the radical agenda that they wanted 2 years ago, which was they want to expand the court. They want to break the filibuster. And those are probably things they're going to try and run on that say, but expanding the court is not very popular with Americans. So the idea of even Joe Biden did not want to say he would expand the court when he was running against Donald Trump. So it's not a winning strategy to want to expand the court, and most people don't know what the filibuster is anyway. So in terms of whether this will change the midterm election, will have an effect, maybe. It will galvanize the people who were already going to vote blue anyway. But when it comes down to it, you look at the Dow in the past couple days, it was down 1,000 points. Yesterday, it was down, I think, 300 or 400 points today. The housing bubble is starting to collapse, or has been popped. There's a lot of economic pain on the horizon, unfortunately, for America. And when people are paying $5 or $6 for gas, and it could go higher still, I don't know how many people are going to remember back to early May and say, well, I know I'm paying $6 for gas. I know my house is worth half of what it is. And, I know my retirement account is basically in the crapper, but I want to make sure I vote to keep abortions top of my list. I just don't see it as a top kitchen table issue for a lot of people.
Agreed.
And it's a long way, in today's political climate. Between now and November is like a lifetime. It's an eternity. There's so much time. We haven't even really fired up all the primaries yet to know who's running. So we'll see. But it's definitely rejuvenated the Democratic Party, who seemed like they had nothing going into these midterms. And they're pouncing on it because they know it's their only chance, possibly, to get people out to the polls. So that's my final thoughts.
Perfect.
Awesome. Any other things you want to throw in there, or plug away to let people know where they can go find you?
Sure. If people want to stay connected on Twitter, I'm Cynthia Kawi. So it's CYNTHIA. Then my last name is KAUI, or you can find me on Instagram. Thank you.
Yeah, and as always, we do 2 podcasts. We do Coffee and California Politics every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. over on Instagram, where we sit and we chat. We talk about California politics over coffee. It's live on Instagram, so you can enjoy the conversation over there. And then there's always these other podcasts where we have guests and we sit and we chat about stuff like this or videos. It could be anything. So if it's your first time tuning in, thanks for tuning in. You can always find this on YouTube. An audio version will be available on Spotify, Google, Apple, all those places you can get podcasts. If you're a fan of the show and you want to support it, we just launched a Patreon. You can go patreon.com/California Underground for as little as, what do they say? The line is always, for the price of a coffee a month, you could support independent California news for $5 a month. And there's other ranges going up if you want to get free merchandise and stuff like that. If not, the best thing you can do to support this program, just text someone that you know who would like this show and say, hey, you should check out California Underground. I think you would enjoy it. So that's basically it. So thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.